This is a Louie T Network exclusive.
Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Draft zone.
Who else could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome. You are in the lab room, of course. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on the 2016 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2016 NFL Draft using our baseball grade scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series because we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out. And I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we will get a score for each and every single player selected by X that team in the draft. Tally up all those scores, apply bonuses when necessary, divide by the number of picks made by that team in the draft, which will then yield us a final overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the process picked by you. That's right. You, the viewer out there, is in total control. It is the you pick or the up format here on the 2016 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where you, the viewers, are in total control of who is next in this series by simply being the first. No equivocations. You can't be second. You can't just miss by a fraction of a second. You gotta be first, and you gotta have two things in your comment when being first: the team you want to see next and the actual phrase next. I don't care how you word it, I don't care how you phrase it, as long as the phrase next and the team you want to see next in the series is in that comment and you're first, that team is going to be next up on this series. And because of you guys out there, the next team up in this series is the Indianapolis Colts. And I'm not going to mix words. I really think that their general manager, Ryan Grigson, is probably the worst GM in all of National Football League, okay? But that being said, this is a quality draft here. Maybe him being on as hot a hot seat as you could be, because I thought that he was going to be fired, and I think most people around the league just thought it was a foregone conclusion that Ryan Grigson would be relieved of his duties and they were going to start fresh in Indy this season after the train wreck of a 2015 season it was in Indy. However, he kept his job, so did head coach Chuck Pagano, and so we'll see what happens in 2016. This is a good start, okay? I thought last season's offseason was a little bit of a foreshadowing of what was to come. I thought last season's offseason was a mess. It was a train wreck. I thought the offseason acquisitions and free agency was a mess. I thought the draft started off with a very resounding thud with that selection of Philip Dorsett in the first round last year. So I just felt like a lot of what they did last year didn't jive with where this team was going. This offseason, a little bit more low-key. They made some smart, shrewd decisions. And I think this draft reflects where this organization is vastly different from where they were a season ago. Let's talk about the 2016 NFL Draft of the Indianapolis Colts. We start in the first round, 18th overall pick. Alabama center Ryan Kelly is the selection. If you ask me, you talk about the safest pick in this draft, it may be Ryan Kelly. I mean, after watching his tape, I'm convinced that he's the guy that you take if you just want to make sure you're going to get this thing right. And there are a lot of good players in the first round that were selected this year. A lot of guys with elite talent. I think he's one of them. But on the offensive line, I think he's about as safe a bet as you're going to get. I don't care, right, left, you tackle, whomever. I think Ryan Kelly is about as safe as you're going to get along the offensive line and maybe in this draft, period. Let's talk about him, 6'4", 311 pounds. Dominant, smart, tough center. You get all of those traits in one package. You gotta love what you're getting if you're the Indianapolis Colts. He's a technician, a guy that uses the fundamentals of the position correctly. Great angles. I think he uses his hands well, good hand placement, solid punch, the ability to displace guys and create angles so that, and let's just jump into some of these pros and get into what I really liked about Ryan Kelly and why I just made the statement that I did, that I think he's the safest first round selection. Outstanding on the double team. I think that allows him the ability, and as a center, you got to be great on the double team because of all the offensive linemen on the offensive line, that the center position is the one that normally doesn't have a specific guy to block. On most snaps, the center doesn't have a guy lining up directly over him or even shading over him. Depending on what kind of front you're facing, of course, if you're facing a four-man front, most likely that center is not going to have a guy covering him up. You're playing against a 3-4 front, maybe he's got a guy over him. He's definitely going to have a guy shading over him, but still, he's the guy that's going to most likely have to be that double team guy. He's usually the designated double team offensive lineman, so needs to be really good at getting to that double team, and then if need be, getting off of that double team and getting to the second level. I think he does that as good as any offensive lineman guard in this entire draft. He's got underrated athleticism, I think. I didn't hear a lot of people ranting and raving about this man's athleticism, but it's there. It's apparent. And you want to know why Derrick Henry won the Heisman Trophy? Don't look any further than Ryan Kelly. Now, again, at Alabama, those guys are always good. Cam Robinson might be the best tackle in all of college football going into next season. But make no mistake about it, Ryan Kelly, a lot of his runs, a lot of his chunk and beefy runs, those big boy runs, those 55-yarders for touchdowns, those 47-yarders down to the 8-yard line, they came in the interior of this offensive line behind a Ryan Kelly-led block. So I feel like he does a great job of getting to that second level, getting to that linebacker, getting to that safety, and giving him that kick-out block he needs. And you see it on the pull-outs as well when he's pulling as that center to the outside. You see it when he gets to the second level. I think that athleticism is very, very underrated. He creates a new line of scrimmage and angles very well. And so what you'll get from this guy is he's not just satisfied with engaging a guy, defensive lineman or a linebacker or even a safety. He's not satisfied. That doesn't do anything for Ryan Kelly. What he wants to do is take that guy and displace him 3 yards up the field and really open up some space. And when he can't do that, and about 75% of the time he's doing that, okay? But when he can't do that, when he can't take a guy and move him against his will, what he does is he creates an angle for that running back, mainly Derrick Henry, sometimes Kenyon Drake. What he does is he takes that off that defensive lineman or linebacker and turns it. And he turns his body, turns his hip, turns it, squares his shoulders, and allows that running back to have a clear lane to cut off of his block. It is so easy to read his blocks, it's not even funny. Makes it easy for a running back to make a decisive cut, stick his foot in the ground, and go much faster than slow. So you're getting a lot out of Ryan Kelly when he doesn't create a new line of scrimmage, when he doesn't drive a guy back 2 or 3 yards upon impact. He just turns him, creates an easy angle for the running back to cut off of his block. It is a beautiful thing to watch if you've ever seen him do his job at Alabama. He anchors very well. Not a lot of noise coming out of that center position. When guys try to bull rush, he's as stout as you'll find at the center position in this draft. And so I think he anchors beautifully as well. And physically engages and drives defensive players off the football. And I talked about this with several other offensive linemen in this draft, where they will go and they will contact a defensive player and engage them, but they will not drive them. They will not stay engaged and locked in. They will contact, they separate, and that player still has a chance, even though he's just been knocked off balance temporarily, still has a chance to get into play and affect the play. Whereas if you lock on to a guy, you engage him, lock on, and drive him and stay engaged, he's not doing anything. And that's what Ryan Kelly does, I think probably better than most even tackles and guards in this draft, is he locks on to defenders, engages them, and then drives them off the football. His cons, when moving laterally, it's just one. I can take the S off of that. I didn't really see a lot here, man. That's why I feel like he's the safest, one of the safest, if not the safest pick in this entire draft class. When moving laterally, and again, when I start using specific terms like moving laterally, I'm nitpicking, okay? A combination, when moving laterally, a combination of quickness and hand usage can beat and defeat Ryan Kelly. It's not often that it happens. I only saw one guy give him trouble. Watched about 5 or 6 games on this guy just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. And I just saw dominant performance after dominant performance And your running backs don't total over 2,000 yards rushing, and your running back doesn't win the Heisman Trophy without guys in front of him being dominant. I think Ryan Kelly might have been one of the most dominant players in terms of the center position in all of college football last year. And I saw McDowell out of Michigan State giving him a little bit of problem, and McDowell's a really talented player. Watching him on several different tapes, and actually watched him against both of your centers that you selected in your first round pick and your 7th round pick. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But McDowell is a guy that flashed some quickness, used some good hand usage, had some really good length on him as well. Big, tall guy that gave him some fits and was able to get in the backfield and disrupt some plays in that game, that playoff game versus Michigan State. But all things aside, man, Ryan Kelly is just about as clean as it's going to get at the center position. It might be as clean a prospect as you'll find in this entire draft class. You already know what this is. You knew what this was when I said he was the safest pick in this draft potentially. It's hit hard. It's hit deep. Out of hit. So home run in the first round for the Indianapolis Colts with Alabama center Ryan Kelly. This guy is a no doubt about it type of shot. You don't move from your stance. This one is gone and it's not coming back. Love this selection. I think we've made a lot about the offensive line struggles for the Indianapolis Colts, and it's no secret that they needed to really upgrade the protection in front of Andrew Luck. And by looking at this draft, you'll see they felt like it was a necessity to upgrade the offensive line in front of Andrew Luck. And I think the interior is something that we don't talk about. We always look at the tackles. Tackles are the problem. Tackles are the problem. Well, in Indy, I think that they do need to shore up one of the tackle positions at right tackle, but I think the problem was more so inside at the interior, and I think you just really rectified that at the center position with Ryan Kelly. You go to the 2nd round, 57th overall selection, Clemson DB. TJ Green is the selection. Probably one of my most intriguing prospects going into the draft process. Watching him at the combine, seeing his size and his length and his speed. First thing first, 6'2", 209, height, weight, speed specimen. I talked about that briefly and I'm going to elaborate on it now. Seeing him at the combine and seeing how tall he was, seeing him play. You could tell the guy was big. Him and J-Ron Kurtz formed one of the biggest safety duos in all of college football. J-Ron Kurtz being 6'4", this guy being 6'2". And you're seeing a guy running 4.34 at the combine and you're just saying, wow, that's a total mind blow. That size at the safety position, running that fast. What's with this guy? So I was intrigued by TJ Green. Blazing speed. I just told you 4.34, 40. You're not seeing guys run that fast at that size, at that position very often. So again, another intriguing caveat to this player here in TJ Green. Tremendous length. 32-inch arms. Again, I'm not a big inch arm guy, especially if you're talking about skill positions. If you're talking about a tackle, yeah, offensive lineman, yeah, definitely want to know what the arm length is because it matters. When you're at safety, not necessarily that big of a deal, but when you're putting this guy on the field and you're asking him to cover somebody man-to-man, hey, he might be a step behind, but guess what? With that speed and that height and those arms, you're never out of the play. And so those arms are going to give him a little bit of an advantage if he's in man-to-man coverage, if he's in zone coverage and he needs to try to bat a ball away and he's not quite in the position he needs to be. Hey, those go-go gadget arms may come in handy for him, so that length can and probably will help him at the next level. Willing to tackle. When I look at a guy that comes from the offensive side of football and is now a defender, I always think to myself, subconsciously, does this guy want to tackle? Does he want to be physical? The answer here is yes. This guy didn't have a problem getting in the mix. 95 tackles tells you all you need to know. I watched him on tape. He wasn't always clean. It wasn't always the best effort in terms of coming up, breaking down, being fundamentally sound and getting the guy on the ground. But I'll tell you one thing, he wasn't ever afraid and he was never hesitant to come in there, put his hat on a guy. Now again, sometimes he's out of control with that kind of speed. It's easy to get out of control and be OC. But a number of times I saw him be the last line of defense. A couple of times come to mind, O.J. Howard in that national championship game. I can't tell you how many times T.J. Green stopped this guy. If O.J. Howard had 5 catches for about 170 yards, 3 of those catches could have went for touchdowns if not for T.J. Green. So a number of times he had to break down out in space and get O.J. Howard down and was able to do so. So yeah, this is a guy that will break down and make tackles, but sometimes he will be out of control. But again, at the end of the day, he's not afraid to put a hat on a hat, and that's all I needed to see out of him. versatility, and I think the Indianapolis Colts were intrigued, much like most of the teams in the National Football League with this guy, was intrigued by his versatility. A lot of teams probably looked at him and said, hey, we want to try this guy at corner, man. With that kind of size and speed, hell, why waste him at safety? Let's put him at corner. And the Indianapolis Colts may have been thinking the same thing, but this guy can play free safety. He can play strong safety at Clemson. They had him up around the line of scrimmage sometimes, you know, being that extra defender in the box. They had him back as the final last line of defense, as their free safety. He was over the slot a couple of times, running with some tight ends and some receivers. So this is a guy that you can do multiple things with. So I think that versatility in itself was enough to get this guy selected in the second round. I definitely heard some rumblings and grumblings of some Colts fans who weren't happy with this selection when it was made. And I said, look, man, this guy's an athletic freak. And if you're the Indianapolis Colts, I don't know exactly what you're going to do with this guy quite yet. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But just know that you got a guy that you can play with. And this is a really intriguing prospect here. A big slab of clay, as we always say, with guys that are raw, that you really want to mold into the type of player you want them to be. I don't think you can get a bigger slab of clay to work with than TJ Green. Special teams value, this is a guy that you put on any teams. As your head coach Chuck Pagano likes to say, you put this guy, he's a four-core type of guy playing all four core special teams. So this is one of those type of guys that you look at and you say, all right, this guy fits into the equation just about everywhere. Kickoffs, punt return, you name it, he can be on that team for you. And then upside, I just pretty much mentioned this with the slab of clay reference. This is the type of guy that he hasn't reached his peak and potential yet, and I'm going to elaborate on that now. But the upside here is tremendous for this guy. It's through the roof. You can't even see it, because what he could become in 3 years from now is one of the best players in the league because of the type of measurables and assets he brings to the table. He still doesn't know what he's doing at the safety position, as a defender in general. And I'm going to elaborate on that now. Let's go to his cons. He's raw and inexperienced. This is a guy that used to play receiver. Came to Clemson as a wide receiver. They switched him over to safety in his sophomore season. And he started to get reps at safety. Toward the end of the season, he started to start. Then he made his real impact in his his final season, what ended up being his final season at Clemson. Started every game at safety, was an integral part of them going undefeated throughout the regular season and into the championship game. So this is a guy that started to gain experience, but again, he's wet behind the ears. His breath still smells like Similac. This is a baby on the defensive side of football. So you see him, and let's go to this next con, because this kind of all ties into the lack of experience. Lacks eye discipline. In that national championship game, there were 2 blown defensive assignments that allowed that allowed Alabama to get some big plays. One went for a touchdown. The other one, if I'm not mistaken, turned into a big play that ended up having to be tracked down toward the end zone. Either way, he gave up some big ones, and one of them, I think, was his fault. Because a lot of times, I hate to place blame on defenders, because you never know what was called and whose responsibility was what unless you're sitting in the meeting room. But a lot of times you can look and say, all right, look, that's got to be his fault. I mean, there's no way that they could have expected that corner to get there. That safety needed to be there, and he wasn't. He fell asleep behind the wheel on one particular play. Eyes in the backfield. He allows the tight end to sneak up the sideline. He's supposed to go with. Matter of fact, both of these plays resulted in touchdowns that TJ Green fell asleep on. One was directly his fault. The first one, O.J. Howard sneaks up the sideline, and it was a wheel route, and he was supposed to run with O.J. Howard, and he kind of just fell asleep watching the quarterback. Quarterback loaded him to sleep, and he just got flat-footed and got comfortable. Tight end runs right behind him. Nobody's there. He's supposed to be there in coverage, and it was a miscommunication between he and the other defensive back, and it resulted in a touchdown. Catch down the sideline, O.J. Howard into the end zone. The second one, O.J. Howard again, but this time I think this might have been a cornerback safety mix-up, and I think the cornerback could have been responsible. I thought the safety could have been responsible. Either way, somebody needed to be where O.J. Howard was, and no one was, and it was an easy touchdown. I think T.J. Green might have been in the fault again. So this is a guy that I think sometimes can get lulled to sleep. Again, not being back there very often and just really getting his feet wet. This is a guy that still has a lot to learn, but the talent, the measurables, the height, weight, speed aspect of his game and his build, these are all undeniable traits that I think really intrigues teams, especially the Indianapolis Colts. And that leads me to my final con, which is really not a con, more of a question. What are you? No, seriously, what are you? I asked myself, is this guy better off as a corner, or is he more prone to making plays as a safety? The Colts said, look, we're going to put all that to rest right now. This guy's a safety. We're not playing around with him and trying him at different spots. We want him to learn the safety position in and out. And your defensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, Ted Monachino, said, look, man, I'm going to have some situations where I put 3 safeties on the field. Right now, Clayton Gathers is starting at one safety position, it looks like. Mike Adams may be starting at the other. And I think they're going to put those 2 on the field and say, hey, TJ, get out there with those boys and see what you can do. So I think they're going to see some different things out of your new defensive coordinator coming over from Baltimore. And they're going to switch up some things. And he wants to be more aggressive and attack a little bit more. So you're going to see probably more blitzing. He's a big front 7 guy, so he's probably going to put a lot of pressure and demands on his secondary mates. So it's going to be interesting to see how TJ Green is used in his first season in the NFL. But this guy is definitely, without a doubt, a safety. In the 2nd round, 57th overall selection, Clemson defensive back TJ Green for me is a triple. I am so enamored with this guy's skill set and his ability, his height, his weight, his speed. I'm a sucker, and I tell you this all the time, I'm a sucker, right or wrong, for height, weight, speed specimens. Okay, you show me one of these guys, my eyes get big, they light up, and I start kind of drooling a little bit, wipe my lip, and make sure I'm still good. He's one of those guys that has my interest peaked, and I want to see what happens. I'll definitely be following TJ Green and seeing what he's able to do for this Colts defense, because he brings an element of speed that they currently don't have at the safety position that he's going to add in a major way with that 4.34 40 speed and that 6'2 size. Undeniable that this guy could be a difference maker for the Colts in that secondary. You go to the 3rd round, 82nd pick, Texas Tech offensive lineman Raven Clark is the selection. 6'5", 319 pounds, ridiculous length. All right, ridiculous length is the first pro. This guy's just long and everywhere. All right, long arms, long legs, you name it. This guy is just a big, and again, another one of these slabs of clay, man. I don't think this guy is anywhere near a finished product, and so I'm interested to see how the Colts get the most out of him, because right now I think there's a lot of things that he needs to work on in order to be a good pro at the next level. But his length, that's one thing you can't teach. You either wake up with it or you don't. This guy has it, and he has it in spades. Great recovery. Because of that length, you get great recovery. You can be a step slow. You can mistime a punch and still get back into play when your arms are 36 inches. And just to give you a little bit of reference, the average length that NFL evaluators are looking for is 32 inches. This guy's arms are 36 inches long. So the type of things that he can do with that length is something that allows him to be able to overextend maybe and still have a guy beat him and still rebound enough to push him around the quarterback. What you'll see out of him a lot of times is he loves putting people in the sleeper hole. He loves going up under the neck and putting guys to sleep. I can see him getting a ton of holding penalties. Officials will let you get away with that. If the defensive end is savvy and understands that he's being choked to death, essentially, they'll throw their arms up, start flailing, it'll draw the attention of the official, and he'll throw the flag. I can see the Raven Clark, if he in fact is still at tackle, I can see him getting some penalties because of that, but that's another discussion for another day. Good athleticism. I think he's a solid athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete. I think he's a solid athlete. I see him getting to the second level. I see him pulling. I see him getting to the second level with quickness. I was impressed. I didn't think he was going to be as fast as he was, and I'll tell you why that was so impressive here in a second. Physicality. He plays with a level of physicality that makes offensive line coaches smile, okay? His physicality, he comes, he brings it, he's looking to knock a guy back. He's the type of guy that's looking to drive you, throw you on the ground. He plays with that extra and that extra gear. And so yes, there's a level of physicality here that I think was really something that the Colts looked at and said to themselves, yeah, this is a guy we can work with that length, with that mindset, with that physicality, and some athleticism sprinkled on top. This is a guy that we want to work with. Durability. And look, it doesn't matter what kind of length you have, you know, what kind of athleticism you may have. If you can't stay healthy, you're not available. What good are you to me? This is a guy, 51 consecutive starts at Texas Tech. Tells you all you need to know in terms of durability. This guy answered the bell each and every single week for Texas Tech, was on the football field in some capacity. So that's something that is definitely reassuring to any team that makes the selection, including the Colts, who did pull the trigger on LaRaven Clark. You go to versatility. This is a guy that started at right guard in his career, but most of his damage was done at left tackle. And so we'll see what happens with him at the next level, but he does offer you some versatility if you do want to kick him inside, and we'll talk about that here in a second. That's a possibility, and he does have experience there before. And upside, much like TJ Green, this is a guy that I think is nowhere near a finished product. And most college players that you get, they aren't finished products, and that's to be expected. You're drafting guys on projection, what you think they can become, not what they are in most cases, but in some cases, you're drafting a guy for what he already is and what you hope he can become. And in the case of LaRaven Clark and even TJ Green to a certain extent, these guys are nowhere near finished products, and you're drafting them solely off the basis of what you think they can become at the next level after you get your hands on them as a coaching staff and mold them into the type of player that you want them to be. And I think LaRaven Clark is definitely a guy with a huge upside, but again, he's got a lot of work to do in my estimation. You go to his cons, poor footwork. I was so upset with his footwork because it negates his length, I feel like. And I'll talk about his length a little bit later again, but against LSU, it was on full display. Arden Key, he's just a physical freak anyway, but their defensive end, one of their defensive ends, and even Deion Jones, who was selected in the second round by the Atlanta Falcons this year, even he was giving him some fits, LaRaven Clark that is. But Arden Key was going to work on LaRaven Clark. He put on a show against him, and there was no answer for what LSU was doing to LaRaven Clark, especially Arden Key. LaRaven Clark had no answer for it. It was just too much quickness, too much athleticism. He wasn't moving his feet quick enough. And I'll go to one of the other cons that I had, which is he relies on his length too often. I think sometimes he gets lazy with the footwork, and instead of him moving his feet, he said, I'm just going to extend these arms and get my arms. Well, this guy's faster than you, and that's not going to work here. And so he was getting spun on. They were going inside on him. They were going outside on him. They were running circles around LaRaven Clark. He didn't know if he was coming or going. He was a turnstile in that game. And if not for the athleticism of Pat Mahomes, who I was also impressed with, and I want to see more of that guy. You talk about somebody that's exciting to watch play the game of football. Pat Mahomes. Somebody had asked me one time, and I don't mean to hijack this breakdown, but they'd asked me, who's someone that jumped off the screen at you while watching and you just kind of ran into him on accident? And he was one of those guys. Pat Mahomes in that LSU game, and I'm pretty sure he does this all the time, he was spectacular, man. Throwing on the run, running backwards 20 yards to throw the football, 30 yards up the field. He was amazing, and luckily, his athleticism bailed LaRaven Clark out of it. If they had a statue back there, LaRaven Clark probably would have been charged with about 5 or 6 sacks in this game. LSU baptized that young man. I'm afraid for him because in the league, there are a bunch of athletes like Arden Key running around, and I don't think LaRaven Clark can stay in front of them if you put him on an island as a tackle. Not right now as it stands. These coaches get their hands on him and get him to move his feet and get him to act as if he doesn't have ankle weights and anvils tied to the bottom of his shoes. Then maybe he'll be able to function a little bit better outside as a tackle on an island. But right now, I'm not seeing it. Obliterated by elite quickness. I basically just said that. I'm not going to repeat that because at that point now I'm beating a dead horse. I've said what I needed to say. He needs to move his feet better. Elite quickness gives him fits, and Arden Key to me is the biggest example of that. What is he in the NFL? That's my final con, and really, it's not a con, it's a question. Is he a guard or a tackle? I think with that length, you'd be remiss, okay? You'd be foolish and idiotic to not try him at tackle first and foremost. Make him fail there, and then as a fail-safe, you just slide him inside the guard. But I think if I'm the Colts, I drafted this guy to be my new right tackle. I'm going to give him every opportunity to win that job and be my right tackle. And even if he gets good enough, you could slide him to left tackle. Hell, why not? Okay? Anthony Costanzo, he's been good. I don't know if he's been great. I'd say if this guy proves to be everything that you thought he could be and then some, over the next 2 or 3 years, and Costanzo will be 2 or 3 years older by then, maybe you make a switch there. Who knows? I'm just talking. Right now, can he even play tackle? I don't even know if that's the case or not. I want to see, but in the 3rd round, 82nd pick overall, Texas Tech offensive lineman. LaRaven Clark for me is a double. His footwork has to change. He has to get better. I want to see him stop reaching, stop grabbing. He's really grabby, especially when he gets beat. I can see a lot of holding penalties. I can see him putting guys to sleep, getting some holding penalties for the sleeper hold. He just needs to move his feet better laterally. And I think he can, because I think he's a good enough athlete. I just think he gets lazy. I think he gets complacent because his arms bail him out a lot of times. I want to see him move his feet more so that his arms can be more of a value to him than what they are right now, which is just a fail-safe for him. I want him to be able to use his length to be able to keep guys at a distance by moving his feet and using them in unison instead of just relying solely on his arms. You look at the 4th round, 116th overall selection, Texas defensive lineman Hassan Ridgeway is the selection, 6'3", 203 pounds. Stout at the point of attack. This is a guy that I look at and I say he's a one-trick pony, a guy that you want in on 1st and 2nd down and stop the run. I don't see this guy being a huge factor as a pass rusher. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he takes on blockers. I'm going to go ahead and run this down quickly because I think they all kind of run together. They bleed together, if you will. Stop the point of attack, takes on blockers, fights through double teams, will push the pocket. These are all things you get out of Hassan Ridgeway. This is a guy that will come up, be physical at the line of scrimmage, at the point of attack, at the point of contact. He's a guy that you want on your defensive line that's going to help you stop the run. Shows flashes of quickness. I think every now and again he will show you why this is a guy that a lot of people feel like has the potential to be much better than what you may have seen on tape. I'm one of those guys that's not convinced that he's much better than what I saw on tape. Now I will say this, he had some injuries in 2015 that hampered him. I watched some 2015 tape, wasn't that blown away. Went back, watched some 14 tape. I said that guy looks much better than the guy I watched in 2015. So some more questions have arisen there as to was he injured when I watched him, because he did miss some snaps. I was surprised some games I'm watching, he's not starting the game, and I'm like, where is he at? If he's so good, if he decided to come out after his junior year, why aren't you starting the game? So there's some things going off in my head, some questions that I have that I don't have answers to right now. But I think another thing that the Colts love with this guy is versatility. He can play the 1, the 3, or the 5 tech. You saw him lining up over the center and playing. I saw him play some 0 tech, flush over the center a couple of times, but most of those times it was 1 tech. He can play the 3 tech, he can play the 5 tech. I think the Colts love all of that. Play this guy up and down that defensive line and have that kind of versatility to move this guy around where you need him. So I know they do love that about him as well. Talk about your new defensive coordinator, Ted Montecchino. He loves defensive linemen that are versatile, that can move. You know, Chuck Pagano, another guy that loves versatility up front. This is a guy that offers that to you. Cons. No one dominant trait. Nothing stands out about Hassan Ridgeway to me. I look at him and he's just bland. It's just meh. I look at him and I don't see a guy that changes the game in any one thing that he does. I look at him and I say, can I get any kind of pass rush out of you? Do you have a move that scares the guy in front of you? Is there one thing that you do that I say, okay, that is dominant? I don't see it. I don't see one dominant trait out of this kid yet. Injuries slowed him down in 2015 as the next con. I kind of mentioned that already. I watched him in 2014. I thought he looked a lot sprier. I thought he looked a lot more efficient as a football player in 2014. More physical, ran to the ball a little bit better. Wasn't that blown away with him in the 2015 tapes that I watched. So I've got some questions about him, and maybe the injuries did have a lot to do with that in 2015. Should have stayed for his senior season. That's my final con. And again, I don't like to play this game. As a matter of fact, I hate playing this game. I don't know these guys. I don't know their home situation. I don't know what the rationale for coming out was for him. And I don't ever try to play that game because I don't know. But what I will say is, I heard that he went off of the draft advisory board's recommendation that he was going to be a 2nd round pick. He heard 2nd round, hey, that's good money. I could use that right now. It's probably the thinking. I'm going to go. And this was a deep draft for a defensive lineman. So if the draft advisory board says, hey man, you look like a 2nd round pick, but with all the depth along that defensive line, maybe tack on a round or 2 to that, and he drops to the 4th round. I'm just saying, look, at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for you. Next year's defensive line class, I doubt seriously that it's going to be as strong as this year's class. that he went back for his senior year. I don't think his junior season was that strong for him to come out first and foremost. But if he would have went back for his senior season, had some success, played even better than he did in his junior season, raised that stock a bit in a lesser draft class, maybe you're able to make yourself a first round pick or a second round pick. I'll tell you this much. He's nowhere near as good as Malcolm Brown, who was selected by the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken, in the first round last year, who was his teammate at Texas. He's nowhere near as good as him. And so I was not blown away by Hassan Ridgeway at all whatsoever. In the 4th round, 116th overall selection, Texas defensive lineman Hassan Ridgeway is a double. He's just a guy. I look at him and I say, you're just a guy along the defensive line. Go to the 4th round, 125th overall selection. Florida linebacker Antonio Morrison is the selection. This is not just another guy on your football team. This is a guy that I expect a lot of in Indianapolis. 6'1", 232 pounds, downhill thumper. And let me first say this. I know a couple of Indianapolis Colts fans who were very upset with this pick. When it happened, they were like, what the F? Why do we have this guy? He's not athletic. A lot of these fans get sucked into the underwear Olympics called the NFL Combine, and he didn't perform at the Combine, but you get sucked into the numbers, okay? He's not fast, he's not this, he's not that, doesn't pass the eyeball test, or what may have you. I'm here to tell you, man, put the tape on. That's all I challenge you to do. Put the tape on. I don't want you to sit here and tell me that he runs this, or he's only this tall, or he only weighs this much. Just put the tape on. That's all I challenge you to do. You'll find all these things that I'm about to tell you about, and then some maybe. Downhill thumper. This guy's coming to lay the lumber. He's a physical linebacker. He's tough as nails. That's the next pro. And he's tough as nails not only physically on the football field, but mentally as well. This guy suffered a catastrophic knee injury at the end of the 2014 season, January 3rd, 2015, in the bowl game versus East Carolina. He suffers a knee injury that's supposed to sideline him for the next 10 to 12 months. He's probably going to miss some of his senior season at Florida, may even miss the entire season depending on how rehab goes. And this guy is having none of it. He trains like a maniac, and he's back for the first snap of the next season, which is remarkable. So mentally, this guy's tough. Physically on the field, this is a tough individual. Field general. Love my linebackers, love my safeties. I talk about this all the time. I want them being vocal. I want them on the field, lining guys up, telling people where to line up. Hey, hey, hey. They switching and they sending guys in motion. I need everybody to be shifting. I need him to be setting everybody up pre-snap and getting everybody where they need to be. He's one of those type of guys. He's a field general. I absolutely love it. Instinctual tackling machine. This is a guy that isn't the most athletically gifted guy, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but because of that, you gotta have instincts. You gotta win somehow, and that's how he wins, is being instinctual, shooting gaps, which is the next pro, so I'll lump it in here. He's a gap shooter, man. This is a guy that he's not afraid to shoot his gun, man. I can't stand when linebackers see something developing right before their very eyes, but they scared to shoot the gun. It's loaded. All right, they cocked it back, they cocked the hammer back, and all they gotta do is pull the trigger and they won't do it. They'll sit there, the gun's fully loaded, and they won't squeeze the trigger, man. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody's supposed to shoot the gun, but he's a guy that's not afraid to go shoot a gap, get in the backfield, make a tackle for a loss, go on the outside, running back catches the football on a flare route, lay him down right where he catches the football. He's a very physical, instinctual tackler, which is the reason why this is the first Florida linebacker since 1992-93 to have back-to-back 100 tackle seasons. Keep in mind, the man just came off of major knee surgery. I told you he had a catastrophic knee injury at the end of the 14 season, made it back for the 15 season, and still eclipsed 100 tackles. Again, this is what this man does. He's a football player, folks. I can't explain it to you any more than that. Special teams value, another one of these 4 core guys that you can put on any special teams and get value out of him. I fully expect him to be on every special teams and producing for the Colts early on in his career. You go to his cons, less than stellar athletically. I don't have to tell you that. You already know that. You already know that this guy ran a 5 flat at his pro day. Yes, I said we got offensive linemen that are running faster than him. I don't see it necessarily on tape. Looks like he's running a lot faster than 5 flat. And again, he's not running 40 yards down the field very often, okay? He's a guy, quick burst, very explosive when he drives through the football. I told you he shoots gaps. He's instinctual, so it makes up for the lack of the athleticism. So I don't really worry about it. Reminds me a lot of Brandon Spikes coming into the league. Remember, he was a guy that ran really slow and was very upset that everybody was talking about how slow he was. If you're slow, you're slow. But the difference between he and Brandon Spikes, I think this guy is way more instinctual than Brandon Spikes ever was. And I think he has a chance to really make a huge impact on his Colts defense if given the opportunity. 2-down linebacker. I think that's something he's going to have to change. Right now, the narrative says that because of your lack of athleticism, you can't be on the field on 3rd down. If he wants to change that narrative, he's going to have to do that on his own. Right now, that's the book on him. You can't have this guy on the field on 3rd down because he's not fast enough. He's going to have to change that narrative, or else you're a 2-down linebacker. It is what it is. And finally, his last con, serious knee injury in 2015. I already said that at the beginning of the year last year, at the end of the 14th season, shreds his knee up, has major knee surgery, comes back, starts the next injury that was supposed to take at minimum 10 months to heal. He got it done in 8. So that tells you all you need to know about what this guy is and the kind of worker he is. Worked tirelessly to get back for the season, and not only did he get back, but he was one of the most productive players on a really good Florida Gators defense. In the 4th round, 125th overall selection, Florida linebacker Antonio Morrison for me is a triple. I love this guy's demeanor. I love his work ethic. I love his play on the field. I love his leadership. I love all of the things he brings to the table. I think this is the kind of guy you want in your locker room. This is the kind of guy who's going to make what I perceive to be a very soft Colts defense a lot more physically imposing in the upcoming seasons while he's in Indianapolis. Again, one of these guys that if you give him a chance, you'll see why you made this selection and you'll come to grow and love Antonio Morrison and what he can bring to your football team. Go to the 5th round, 155th pick overall, North Dakota State. Offensive lineman Joe Haig is the selection, 6'6", 304 pounds. That one of these guys that was in front of Carson Wentz at North Dakota State. Good length, 34-inch arms. That always helps. If you're talking about a tackle, putting him on an island, you want a guy with some long arms that can contact that defensive player before he's able to get into the chest of that offensive lineman. Solid athlete. He's a guy that in that power run scheme they had at North Dakota State did a good job of getting off the football, sometimes having to get to the second level. I told you when I broke down Carson Wentz that North Dakota State to me is one of the most effective screening teams in all of college football. That goes for D1, D2, NAIA, whatever. Doesn't matter, okay? FCS, FBS, I don't give a damn. To me, they're one of the best screening football teams in all of college football. And you gotta have guys like Joe Haig that can get to that second level and make some things happen. And I think he's one of those guys that can do that. Outstanding at the second level. That pretty much wraps that up. I basically said what I needed to say there. Physical in the run game. They have a power run scheme at North Dakota State. And the reason they have that kind of confidence in the running game is because of guys like Joe Haig that take the line of scrimmage, erase it like a line drawn in the sand, and extend it out to here and make guys, a little bit wary of what they're going to do, pushing them back, giving the running back easy, clear lanes to which to run. So I think he does a really good job with that. I think where he excels, though, what I saw on tape that really knocked my socks off, great blitz and great blitz recognition and TE game pickup. And TE game is tackle and stunt. What he did was a lot of times they would blitz to his side, overload blitzes. He'd pass off the first blitzer inside, push him off to the guard, and then turn around and pick up that other guy to the outside. I talked about Sean Coleman and how with the Browns, how he wouldn't really know what to do in blitz pickup situations, and he was taking the wrong guy, he wasn't taking anybody. Tackle and stunt sometimes can give some guys some problems. When they make that twist, sometimes that guard, that defensive end, he'll come pinch inside and he'll grab you and take you inside with him. And if you're not quick enough to realize what's going on, that tackle will loop around, and next thing you know, he's already behind you before you can even react. Next thing you know, they're at the quarterback. So he does a really good job of passing guys off. They come with an overload blitz to his side, nudge this guy, get back to the outside. Or you want to come with this tackle in stunt. Okay, I'm going to take him, I'm going to pinch him inside, and I'm going to get back around, and I'm going to pick up this defensive tackle that's looping. So does a really good job of blitz recognition and tackle game pickup. I think he did a really good job in all the tapes that I watched him, and that afforded Carson Wentz the extra time that he needed to get rid of the football. durability. This is a guy that played in 61 games, started 60 of 61 possible games in his collegiate career. So if you want to talk about a guy that is available, you don't get much more available than that. And remember, he played in FCS, which means you got playoff football. They won the championship every single year he was in college. So that means they're playing extra football, and they played the playoffs. So you got about 3 games, including the championship game, in addition to your regular season schedule. So 61 games, that's an eternity in college football. Kudos to him for even making 60 career starts out of 61 possible. That is tremendous. So you know you're getting a guy that is very durable. And finally, versatility. He was the right tackle at North Dakota State. And then Billy Turner, who got selected in the 3rd round about 2 years ago by the Miami Dolphins, who was the left tackle, moves on to the NFL. They shift him over to left tackle. And voila, you got your next guy in line to get drafted into the NFL. And so he held it down at both right tackle and left tackle. So this is a guy that gives you some versatility there as well. You go to his cons, lesser competition. When you play at FCS, you play at North Dakota State, you're not seeing NFL caliber guys all the time. And speaking of which, the one guy that he did see that was NFL caliber was against Montana when they played against Tyrone Holmes, who I thought really had a good day. Matter of fact, he had an excellent day. Now, most of it wasn't against Joe Haig. Most of it was against the right tackle, but when he did see Joe Haig, I thought he bullied him, he pushed him around, did some things against him. Now, Haig was able to hold his ground at the very end, he anchored down, but I thought he pushed Joe Haig all the way back into the lap of Carson Wentz. And if not for a last second, let me give him everything I got, let me anchor down as much as I can, and he would probably got a sack there as well. So I'm pushed around a little bit, which leads me to my last con of Joe Haig. He needs to get stronger, man. I see this guy, I say, man, you're 6'6", 304. I need you to play like you're 6'6", 304. Right now, he's playing like he's 6'6", 204. I mean, guys are pushing him back a little bit. I don't see the toughness and the stoutness that I want to see out of my left tackle. I thought that there was a lot of bend. He never ever broke. I saw a lot of bending though, not too much for my liking. I wasn't comfortable with the amount of pushback that was given and the resistance that I saw, or lack thereof, from Joe Haig when guys were bull rushing him. So that's something he needs to work on. But in the 5th round, 155th overall selection, North Dakota State offensive lineman Joe Haig for me is a double. The size, the length, all of those things are great. I think he's got some athleticism that you can work with. Another one of these guys, but if you mold him into the player that you want him to be, you may have something here in the 5th round in Joe Haig. I think you've already upgraded your offensive line with just what you've done with the first 3 selections in this draft, in terms of the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th round, all being selections made on the offensive line. So I like the fact that the Colts have addressed this, because I think you've got some depth now and some guys that can push some of these players that have been doing, to me, a marginal job in front of Andrew Luck. You go to the 7th round, you got 2 7th round picks, 239th overall selection. Main linebacker Trevor Bates is the selection. 6'2", 245. Good movement skills, 4.72. He was disappointed in that 40 time. He thought he was going to run a 4.6 and some change. He ran a 4.72. It is what it is. I saw him on tape. He looks like a guy that can move really well and probably even runs a little faster than that 4.72 indicates. Can get to the quarterback, had 19 career sacks. Now, that's not a lot of sacks. And to be honest with you, especially, you know my one requisite when you play at a smaller school, okay? You already know what it is. If you've been watching me, if you don't, I'll explain to you very quickly. Dominate the damn competition. I don't give a damn who they put in front of you. I don't care where you're playing. You could be playing at Outback, Montana, Johannesburg State. I don't give a damn. They put an inferior player in front of you, dominate his ass 6 ways to Sunday. Well, I didn't feel like he did that all the time, man. 19 sacks doesn't scream to me, I've been dominating. But to be fair about this, and in all fairness to Trevor Bates, you don't know what they were asking this guy to do. I saw a lot of times where he was dropping in the coverage. So if he's not getting all the opportunities to rush the quarterback, and he's having to drop in the coverage sometimes, I mean, what do you want the man to do? You can't get a sack when you're 15 yards down the field running with the running back out of the backfield, can you? So, you know, it's hard to really quantify that, but 19 sacks means you can get to the quarterback, and 17 of those were in the last 3 years. So That's an average of right around 6 sacks a year. That's solid. If he can come in and get 6 sacks a year in the NFL, I think the Colts will take that, because the Colts aren't a team that generates a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So if they can get any help from a guy to come in and get some pressure on the quarterback, I think he would absolutely make this roster if he can prove that he can get any kind of pressure on the quarterback. Gets his hands on the football. In his junior season, he was able to deflect 7 passes, and 2 of his interceptions, they're probably some of the best efforts you'll see by a defensive end. One of them, he tips it and it looks like he's flexing. He tips the football and then he grabs it right here, but for some reason he raises this arm too, and he's like this, and he picks it off and he takes off and gets a pick 6. And then one, he gets his hands up, deflects the football, and then dives it full out extension and picks it off. It's a gorgeous play. 3 interceptions in that season. So this is a guy that can get his hands and impact the game, not just from a sack standpoint or a tackle standpoint, but also getting his hands on football. So this is a guy that can do some things to really impact the game. And then versatility is his final pro. This is a guy that I thought dropped into coverage quite a bit, did a really good job in my mind, played defensive end, and also can play some outside linebacker, which I think is what the coach said that they want him to do. Hey, 2-point stance, outside, edge rush, get to the quarterback. I don't know if he can make a living out there. I think he's more of a situational pass rusher if he does make this squad. So I've heard rumblings that this guy could move to inside linebacker. I don't see that happening. I think he's an outside edge rusher, situational downs. You put him in the game and you allow him to go get after the quarterback. You go to his cons. His numbers don't grab me. I already explained this. Really, I don't want to beat a dead horse. But when I'm watching a small school guy, I want you to physically take my head and say, hey, I'm the guy you're supposed to be watching. Your numbers are supposed to do that. Like, when I see a small school guy, really mandatory, if you're an edge rusher, mandatory, double-digit sacks. Like, no excuses. I need you to just say, hey, man, I'm here. 15.5 sacks right here. That's me. That's what I'm doing. All right, I need you to dominate the level of competition, but he did it in other ways, so I'll give him a little bit of a pass, but I'm telling you right now, I was not blown away by what I saw. Can he carve out a niche for himself in the National Football League is the final con, and it's really not a con, it's more of a question. What are you? I told you I heard that they may be thinking about moving him to inside linebacker. They don't want to put him at outside linebacker because his arms are too short and he's not big enough. He's not tall enough. He doesn't possess the ability to set the edge in the run game. They're not comfortable sticking him out there consistently. Okay, well, can you get after the quarterback? Can you consistently put pressure on the quarterback? You've got at least one guy that you can learn from in Robert Mathis. If I were him, I would soak up. I would be under Robert Mathis's shoulder pads, literally. Hey man, Mr. Mathis, you need me to carry those for you, man? I mean, I would be in his ass every day at practice because I want to learn from one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League today. So I would be trying to soak up as much knowledge as I can because Robert Mathis is a similar size to him. And so if I was him, I would try to learn from Robert Mathis because the guy was doing it at a relatively high level for over the last decade. So right now, the question is, can you find a way to impact this roster well enough to the point where you make this team? He's got to carve out an niche for himself. In the 7th round, 239th overall selection, main linebacker Trevor Bates for me is a double. I see some potential here. I didn't see the dominant performances that I wanted to see from a guy that coming from a small school, but that being said, I think there's something here that the Colts may be able to tap into and get some production out of this guy potentially as a 7th round selection. And finally, the last pick in this draft, 248th overall selection, Iowa center Austin Blythe is the selection, 6'2", 291 pounds. Agile, nimble-footed mover is what he is. Creates movement in the run game, especially at the second level. I was blown away because you hear 290 pounds, you're not really expecting a dude to be blasting linebackers and safeties and some defensive linemen and just absolutely moving. Well, I mean, whitewashing guys out the way. Straight washing them. This isn't lukewarm water. This isn't cold. He's straight hot, straight scalding water, washing dudes out the way. And I'm like, wait a minute. Am I watching the right dude? And I had to go look at his number. Yeah, number 63, that's what I'm supposed to be watching. What the hell is this? They just moved the guy 7 yards off the ball. Where they do that at? Where does 290-pound dudes do that at? Well, obviously, when you used to wrestle and was a 2-time All-American in high school, that kind of thing can happen. Well, enough said. So, of course, you get the low center of gravity and you get a guy that knows how to use leverage, and that's your end result, is him pushing guys out of the damn way. creates movement in the run game, excellent in space. He was going in the second level and destroying guys, destroying safeties and linebackers. I watched him against Illinois, and he's just taking dudes and taking them for a ride, man. I mean, literally, get on my back, and he was taking them for a ride 5, 6 yards. One dude, he took him out of the damn screen. I couldn't even see him no more. I'm like, damn, which way did he go? Which way did he go? Which way did he go? Where did they go at? Yeah, he took him off the screen, man. I mean, that's what he was doing. Very impressive. Stout inside. He didn't get bull rushed again. 290 pounds. Surprised that guys weren't just taking him and just displacing him. He was just here, huh? And they weren't moving him. So impressed again. Durable, man. This is a guy that had 49 career starts, 40 of them consecutively at center. The first 9 came at guard, and then the rest of them came at center. 40 straight starts at center. So you're getting a guy that you can trust to be in the lineup if need be. And right now, the last pro versatility, the Colts are trying this guy all over the place. Guard, center. They said, look, we want you to be a guy that can do some of everything. If you make this roster, and he's not starting at center, obviously your first round pick is, but I think his best position is going to be center. But they're saying themselves is, if you're going to make this roster, we need you to play multiple positions, both guard positions and center as a backup there. And we need to be able to trust that you can get the job done. And if you can prove that to us, you can make this roster as a 7th round pick. And I think that's what Austin Blythe is out to prove out in camp. His only con for me is his size. And I think his size leads to all of his issues, all the problems that he may have. First things first, this guy's 6'2", and he's 291 pounds. This is not 1998. This is not Mike Shanahan's zone run blocking scheme. You can't be 290 pounds in the NFL anymore. I don't know if they even make 290-pound offensive linemen anymore. I don't even know if they do that anymore. So he's obviously going to have to put on some weight. And I fully expect him to be more so north of 300 pounds by the time the season rolls around. But that being said, he's 6'2". That's not going to change. Okay, he's not going to wake up tomorrow and be 6'4" and have 33-inch arms. He's got 31-inch arms and he's 6'2". I mean, what are you going to do? The guy, I don't think is a guard either in this league, but I could be wrong. I like what he does. I like his wrestling background. I think he moves guys, and I think the Colts do too. That's why they took this guy. If he were 6'4", he'd be Ryan Kelly. Okay? It's as simple as that, because his arms would be longer if he was 6'4", and he'd be taller, and you wouldn't have any problems with his size. But because he's 6'2", 290 pounds, everybody passed him, and that's why he's a 7th round pick. The tape says that this guy should be a 2nd round pick at worst. His size says it's probably more of a UDFA 6th, 7th round pick. So I think you got a really good football player here, just size deficient. That's all. So in the 7th round, 248th overall selection, center out of Iowa, Austin Blythe for me is a double, man. I like this guy. I want him to prove to me that he can play guard, because I'm not sure that he can play it on a consistent basis. I know he can play center at the National Football League level. Put on 10 pounds, be 300 pounds, he can play center. I don't have any doubts about that. Short arms or not, he can play center. I don't know if he can play guard or not. That's a question that I have. One game against Illinois, the size came into play. The guy swim moves him on the inside, and that's Jihad Ward and company. Dude swim moves him and gets inside of him, and he's so small, he's down here, the guy's over him, ripping through him, and he's trying his hardest because he's so small, he's down here trying to keep the guy from squeezing through the gap that he created by swim moving a smaller Austin Blythe, and couldn't stop him. Guy got between him and got to the quarterback and sacked him. So that's where I think his size is a huge deficiency for him at the next level. We'll see what happens with him, though. I like it. So that's the Colts draft in a nutshell. Let's quickly run over their picks. 1st round, Ryan Kelly, center out of Alabama, home run. 2nd round, TJ Green, triple. 3rd round, 4th round, both doubles. LaRaven Clark, offensive lineman out of Texas Tech. Hassan Ridgeway, defensive lineman out of Texas, both doubles. 4th round, Antonio Morrison, linebacker out of Florida, love him, triple. 5th round, you got Joe Haig, offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. He's a double as well. And so are your 2 7th round picks. Trevor Bates, linebacker out of Maine, and Austin Blythe, Iowa center. You total all of that up, you got 1 home run, you got 2 triples, and you got 5 doubles, which nets you 3 doubles bonuses, which all totaled up gives you 26. You divide by the number of selections, which is 8, and you have a grand total of a 3.25 draft for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that Ryan Grigson actually did a good job here. I think he's a guy that realizes that if I mess this up, I probably won't get another GM job. And so this is a draft of a desperate man that looks like he's trying to save his job. And I think this might be a job well done when it's all said and done. We'll see what happens with this draft class and how they perform for the Colts. But that's the 2016 NFL draft of the Indianapolis Colts. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we'll cover. Oh, here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down the National Football League. Bart Scott. Can't wait.
There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In the Lab Room. That's In the Lab Room on Facebook and at In the Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.